Welcome to another English Solutions for Business and Life video, Full Blast A2 level, Module 1, Teen Trends. Today we will be looking at a couple of different topics that have to do with Module 1. First one is the present simple against the present progressive and how each of these is used and what's the difference between these two verb tenses. Another topic that we'll be looking at is stative verbs. What are they and how do we use them? Another topic is comparatives and superlatives. Some, any, no, and every. What are these words and their compound words, and how do we use these words? We will also be looking at past simple, this verb tense, and when we use this verb tense and how do we use it, and used to, this composite verb. So let's begin. First, present simple against present progressive. In this module, we looked at what present simple is and what present progressive is. Now, we use the present simple when we're talking about permanent states, something that is permanent, like I live in Chicago, Ben lives in China. That's present simple. It's something permanent. Habits or actions that happen regularly, like when you eat your breakfast, when you take a shower. We always have breakfast at 8. I always take a shower at 7. That could be an example of present simple. Take a shower, have breakfast. Those are present simple conjugations. General truths. A general truth is something that is generally true. It's a fact. For example, the earth goes around the sun is a general truth. Gravity pulls us to earth. That's another general truth, and it's also a present simple verb. Pull, pulls. Now, general present simple is also used for actions that happen according to a schedule. For example, when a train leaves a station. A train leaves at 9 o'clock, for example. Or the metro leaves every 5 minutes. Those are actions that happen according to a schedule. Now, what about present progressive? Well, present progressive is used for temporary states. Something that is temporary, like I'm taking driving lessons this month. Or I'm living with my parents. It could be a temporary state because these actions or these verbs would end at a certain point in time. Now, it's also used, present progressive, for verbs or actions that happen at the moment of speaking. We could use, for example, Lucy is sleeping now. I am writing an essay. John is recording a video. Those are actions that are happening right now at the moment of when I'm speaking. Another one could be future arrangements. Future arrangements. For example, we're flying to Zanzibar tonight. We are flying to Zanzibar tonight. I'm going to the dentist next week. Going, flying, sleeping, taking. Notice that most of the time they end with ing, these verb tenses. Now look at these examples. John lives in London and I'm staying at a hotel. Lives is a present simple verb because it's a permanent state. Staying is a temporary state, so it's a progressive. In this case, the hotel is not a permanent place I'm staying at, so we use this form of the verb. These are the two differences between present simple and present progressive. I hope it was clear. If you have any more doubts, you can always ask your teacher about it. Now let's go to the next topic, stative verbs. When do we use stative verbs? Well, stative verbs are not normally used in the present progressive tense. They're called stative verbs, and some of them can be categorized as follows. They can be senses, for example, see, hear, or smell. They are senses and they're stative verbs. They can be feelings such as like, love, again, like, love, hate, want, or other feelings that you might have towards something or someone. They can talk about the mind or your memory, like the following verbs: think, understand, know, etc. And there are some other verbs that are stative verbs, such as be, have, or cost. Now, what's the importance of these stative verbs? Well, we don't use them normally with present progressive because they would mean something else or they would not make sense. For example, when we're saying a sentence and we're talking about temporary states or actions that are happening at the moment of speaking, we don't say, for example, I'm hearing a bird. We would say, I can hear a bird or I hear a bird, but not I'm hearing. He's loving his mother. It would be correct. He loves his mother would be a more correct sentence. Lisa is snowing. The car is costing. Those are sentences that are wrong because we don't normally use the present progressive with these stative verbs. I hope you understood, and if you have more questions, you can also ask your teacher about this. Now let's go to the next part of the topic, comparatives and superlatives. When do we use each of these? Well, we use a comparative to compare two people, two animals, or two things. These adjectives are normally followed by than. They can be adjectives or adverbs. And the difference between the comparatives and the superlatives is that we use the superlative to compare one thing, animal or person, to several or many of the same kind. And normally these adverbs and these adjectives take the and are followed by prepositions of or in. For example, well, before the example, how do we form these words? Well, one syllable or most two-syllable adjectives will add an er at the end when they're comparatives and an est at the end when they're superlatives. And when they are three or more syllables and some two-syllable adjectives or adverbs, we'll have more for comparatives and then the adjective, and a most for superlative adjectives or adverbs. So let's look at a quick example. The box is bigger than the cat. Here we're comparing two things, the box and the cat. And we know that the box is bigger than the cat. Okay? So in the second sentence, we're talking about the elephant and animals in Africa. The elephant is the biggest animal in Africa, which means that if we compare the elephant to other animals in Africa, the elephant will be bigger than all of them. So the difference here is that we're comparing two things, and here we're comparing one thing to the rest. Now let's go to the next part of this module. Other comparisons. Well, comparatives and superlatives are used, as I already mentioned, to compare two things or one thing to another group of things. We can also use different comparisons, such as less than. Less, an adjective, and than. Also, the least and an adjective, and of or in. Also, as, an adjective, and another as. Not as, an adjective, and another as. We use these as follows. Here are some examples. Fiona drives less carefully than his sister. Less and than. Here we're using carefully as the adjective that we are, or adverb in this case, that we're comparing. Now, notice that we do not use er or es in these comparisons. This is a comparative sentence. Fiona drives less carefully than her sister. This is a superlative sentence. Antarctica is the least populated continent of all. We're comparing Antarctica to other continents in the world. And we're saying that out of all those continents, Antarctica has less people. It's the least populated continent of all. The next example has as and as. Fiona dances as well as her sister. Here we're comparing the two, but they are about the same level, in this case, of how well they dance. And when we're comparing them to something else, but negatively, they're not as good as their teacher, we use this form or this sentence structure. Not as and as. That means that the two things that we're comparing, or in this case the two groups of people that we're comparing, are not similar. I hope you understood this part. Now let's go to the next section of this module. Some, any, no, and every. Some, we use some and any uncountable or plural countable nouns for affirmative sentences and in questions when we offer something or ask for something politely. Notice that it's for affirmative sentences. For example, there is some orange juice in the refrigerator. That's a positive sentence or an affirmative sentence. Would you like some fries? Is a question. Could I have some coffee? Some coffee. Could I have some coffee? Is a way of asking politely for something. Now, any. We use any for and uncountable or plural countable nouns for questions and negative sentences. For example, is there any orange juice in the refrigerator? Or there aren't any fries on the table. There aren't any fries on the table. That's a negative sentence. The next part, no or not any, and any uncountable or plural countable nouns. They're used to say or talk about an affirmative sentence to give a negative meaning. What does this mean? Well, for example, there is no cheese in the refrigerator is the same as there isn't any cheese in the refrigerator. Remember that we used any for negative sentences when we're saying a sentence and we're stating something negative. In this case, it's something positive but with a negative meaning. So now let's go to the next part. Every. Every. We use every with singular countable nouns, and we use it in affirmative sentences. For example, every family in this town has a car. Every person in my house uses glasses. Those are affirmative sentences, and we use them with singular countable nouns. Now let's go to the next part, the past simple. If you have any more questions about those words, some, any, no, and every, and their compounds, you can ask your teacher. Right now we're going through this topic because there are lots of things in this module, and we would like to cover them all in this video. So past simple. We use past simple with actions that have started and were completed in the past. Such as, we bought our house 5 years ago. It's an action that started and was completed at a specific time in the past. Habitual or repeated actions in the past. For example, I always went to bed early when I lived with my parents. Went to bed early. Those are habitual or repeated actions in the past. And lastly, completed actions that happened one after the other in the past. For example, yesterday I got up at 8 o'clock, had breakfast, and left for school. Here the past simple verbs were got up, had breakfast, and left for school. Now, there are a couple of irregular verbs in this sentence, so you can check them out in the book on page 127. Now, remember that the past simple for the verb can is could, and for the verb to be is was or were. Now, lastly, let's look at used to. We use this verb to talk about something that happened regularly in the past, but no longer does or doesn't happen anymore. For example, we used to go skateboarding every afternoon when we were young. We used to go skateboarding every afternoon when we were young. Now, I would like to just mention the compound words for some, any, no, and every. There are a couple of different words for each of these words and their compounds, and they are used exactly the same way as some, any, no, and every, but they're not followed by a noun. They always go with singular verbs. Now, let's look at them. For people and some, we use someone or somebody. For any, we use anyone or anybody. For no, we use no one or nobody. For every, we use everyone and everybody. For some and things, we use something. For any, we use anything. For no, we use nothing. And for every, we use everything. And for places and some, we use somewhere. For any, we use anywhere. For no, we use nowhere. And for every, we use everywhere. Now, as I already mentioned, these compounds are used in exactly the same way as some, any, no, and every, with the exceptions that they are not followed by a noun, and they always go with singular verbs. So, that would be it for this video. I'm sorry if it was too long, but I hope it has cleared up a couple of grammar notes for this module. We'll see you in next video. Thank you very much.